Well, this first story happened not too far before the pandemic, and I was going down to North Carolina for a storytelling festival. And it was in Baltimore, Washington airport. I was just tying my shoes back up, and I looked down at my feet, and there was a beagle. She was practically sitting on my feet. Now, I know from my nephew that when you were stopped by a drug sniffing dog at the airport, they sit on your feet. Now, never mind how he knows, and I don't want his mother to find out that I've been spreading it around, but there was this beagle doing this kind of beagle smile, an elderly beagle, and she had a lot of gray around her muzzle. And when I looked up behind her, there was this enormous man in a flak jacket with DEA across the front. And he had a gun, and he had handcuffs, and he had a bunch of zip ties, enough for a drug cartel. And he said, "Sadie here has discovered something of interest in your bag. Will you please come with me?" So I pulled up the handle on my little red suitcase, and I followed him and Sadie, and slowly though, because she was a somewhat elderly dog. And we went up to one of those doors you see in the airport, authorized personnel only, alarm will sound. And he keyed us in, and he went down the hall, and I followed them. And if you've ever wondered about these spaces, they're nowhere near as nice as the airport. Linoleum floors, fluorescent lights, and metal door after metal door with a little window in it. He led me into one with an open door, and he said, still using his outside voice, "Put your suitcase up on the bench and keep your hands in sight at all times." So I put my suitcase up and I unzipped it, and Sophie went to town. She was so happy. She was wagging her tail. She drooled on my nightgown. She drooled on the shirt I had actually ironed, and she zeroed in on my travel kit. Now, I have to tell you something that I had recently started using CBD ointment for some pain in my wrists. And to cut to the chase, I took the travel kit and I opened it up and I brought out the little jar. The stuff comes in a big container like a shoe polish can, but it's so expensive. So I had just scooped out a little and put it in a tiny jar. And I took the lid off, and Sophie wagged more and more and more and looked more and more excited. And I held it out to her, and she opened her mouth really wide, and she ate the jar. "Drop it, Sophie, drop it." Sophie did not drop it. "Spit it out, Sophie." And he tried that thing on the corners of the mouth to force her mouth open. He said, "What's in that stuff?" And I said, "CBD ointment." And all of a sudden, Sophie gave a big gulp, and she swallowed the jar. Now, her handler looked like he might cry. He picked her up and clutched her against his chest and ran out into the hall calling, "Tina, Tina, I need you." And he didn't come back. And he didn't come back. And, they hadn't taken my name. The stuff is really perfectly legal in the whole country. I had a plane to catch. So I looked out in the hall and I didn't see anybody. And I zipped up my little red suitcase and I pulled up the handle and I left the room. Now, I had been kind of flustered when I came in, so I didn't know which way to go, and I picked the wrong way. And I was passing door after door, storage rooms marked knitting needles and nail clippers, a whole one of shampoo and conditioner. And I saw a barrel full of Swiss Army knives. But eventually, way down at the end of the hall, I saw another one of those push bar doors, and I headed for it as fast as I could. And for your general knowledge, the alarm seems to only sound on the way in, not on the way out. And I pulled out with my suitcase and I looked, and I was really a long way from my gate, but I could follow the numbers. And I went pulling the suitcase as fast as I could. And the numbers were coming down to mine, and the gate was empty. But the desk staff were waving me on like I was coming in as the runner in a race. And they quickly scanned my boarding pass. They shooed me down the entry galley, the entry hall, and I ran as fast as I could. And I got on the plane. And I could hear the pilot telling the stewardesses to arm the doors for takeoff. Now there was an aisle seat. And this part you are never going to believe, but there was actually room in the overhead bin for my suitcase. And I was so pumped up that I picked up that suitcase up over my head and I slam dunked it into the overhead compartment, slammed it shut, and sat down and buckled up and closed my eyes, because I had just been hauled away by the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I didn't want to make eye contact with anyone. Now, I wished Sadie well. I hope if she had some problems with her hips or her little paws, maybe it would help. But I didn't know the end of the story until I got to where I was going. And I was in the place where I was staying, and I was taking out my shirt to dry it off and hang it up. And I flicked on the television. Now, it was the nightly news, but do you know how they put in those little funny stories just to keep you going through all the grim news? And I was putting away something when I heard drug-sniffing dog in Baltimore swallows the evidence, seems to have discovered the fountain of youth. And I wheeled around, and there was Sadie. She was frisking around. She was wagging her tail, putting her paws down just like a puppy. And there was her handler, and he was actually smiling. And when he held a little dog treat up above her nose, she rose up on her hind legs and she pranced around like a circus dog. Well, that ointment has not really worked for me yet, but I still have hope. And that's the end of the drug sniffing dog. Now, my next story also has some red in it. Oh, thank you. But not the happy, pleasant red of my suitcase. No, this has a red like the blood when you cut your finger, shockingly red, that you just can't believe anything that red. I'll start out when I was in high school. Now, I went to an all-girls high school. It was public, but we had a very strict dress code. No pants, no tight shirts, no tight skirts. Your hemline had to be 2 inches above the knee or more, or less, actually. And it was given to the math teachers to measure this. When a girl knelt on the floor, the bottom of her skirt should touch the floor. And if it did not, you were given a pair of scissors and sent to the bathroom to pull out the hem. Now, I don't know why the math teachers got to do this. Maybe they were the only ones with rulers or had measurement skills, or they were the only ones tough enough not to do a plea bargain. But you could see girls all through the halls with dangling hemlines. It became something of a badge of honor. How many did you have to take down this week? But by the time my daughter went to school, now they couldn't wear T-shirts with anything ugly, no ugly words, no ugly pictures on it. And in sort of a retro solution, they would send them to the bathroom and they'd have to turn the T-shirt inside out. I imagine they couldn't wear swimwear, but other than that, anything goes, and the parents were on their own. Now, my daughter had some birthday money, and she wanted to go to the mall with her friend and go shopping. Now, she probably went to some store like Torrid or Hot Topic or Forever 21 or Rue. And to those of you without teenage daughters, you might think I am making up those names, but I am not. It was there that she purchased the sleazy red shirt. She had cashed the checks lovingly written to her by her grandmother and her great aunt, and they were probably sent to her in birthday cards with kittens and puppies on them saying, "Oh, to the sweetest little girl in the world." And that's what she came home with. She tried it on for me. It was the color of blood. It was thin, clingy fabric with short sleeves and a deep V-neck, and it laced up the front with red cord, and the slit went almost to the navel. And I said, "Tighten up the cord." And she said, "You can't, it bunches up the fabric." She was right, it did. Now, I had already lost the battle of platform shoes and said, "All right, go ahead, break your ankle." And I had lost the battle of visible bra straps. When she bought a bra that came with 3 different straps, flowered, lace, and clear, she said, "You see, they're meant to show." And had we had a different sort of relationship, I would have marched her back to the store, slapped the shirt down on the counter, and said, "Give her her money back." But we didn't have that kind of relationship. So she came down the next Monday morning. Now, I must tell you that my daughter had seemingly developed overnight. She had acquired what our elderly pediatrician called her secondary sex characteristics: little pop-up breasts, a waist, hips. I remember when that happened to me, and I was dismayed. I felt like my body was rushing me out of my childhood and giving me something horrible to look forward to every month. but my daughter seemed to welcome it. And she came down in the sleazy red shirt, showing about an inch of skin all the way down to the navel. Now, she had on regular jeans and non-platform shoes. She had on a lot of badly applied eye makeup. And again, had I been a different sort of mother, I would have said, "Get back to your room, young lady. You think you're going to school like that? You have another think coming." But I didn't. And she left for school. And I might lie and say that I worried about it all day, but I didn't really. I did have a pleasant little fantasy that the school would call me and tell me to bring some appropriate clothes for my daughter, but they didn't seem to care either. What I did get was at 3 o'clock, a daughter who came looking like she had run home from the bus stop. She was not exactly crying, but she was all hot around the eyes. She dropped her backpack in the doorway and ran upstairs and came down sometime later in her father's old college sweatshirt and big raccoon eyes, what mascara gives you as a gift when you cry while wearing it. I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Nothing, nothing." And I laid out all the best snacks. And she ate like she had never seen food. And it is, in fact, my opinion that she probably spent her lunch period hiding in the bathroom. I don't know what happened to the sleazy red shirt. My kids very early in life began to do their own laundry, so I didn't see it in the laundry. You ask how early? There was a step stool in front of the washing machine, and I brought little detergent squares that you just tossed in. Now, the rule in our house was when you're finished with one machine, you move it to the next, and when you're finished with the dryer, you get your stuff out so somebody else can use it. Now, I had a load of wet laundry. Her stuff was still in the dryer. So I pulled it out and I plumped it on top, and maybe something fell behind the dryer, but I had a sprained ankle, and even if I had been inclined to move the dryer, I couldn't do it. So when I went upstairs, I said, "Your clothes were still in the dryer, and now they're on top, unfolded, and maybe something fell behind it." And she said, "I bet it was my red shirt. You hate that shirt." I have never disappeared my children's clothes. It was done to me as a child. I can remember some little sky blue socks that I just loved, and I would love to look down at my feet and see those socks, and after a while they were gone. And so was my cowboy shirt, for that matter. But I was guiltless in this. It hadn't really occurred to me to do that. And anyway, it would not be the honest thing for me to do, but I had not knowingly done it. But as I say, she never wore the shirt again. So did she put it in the charity bag that's in the front closet? Did she put it in one of those donation boxes you see on the street corners? And do I need to feel bad for some mother low on funds who has to buy her daughter clothes in the thrift store? Or worse, some mother in a third world country that they are all arguing with their children about this sleazy red shirt? I don't know. I wish I had a photograph of it, though. Just in case she ever has a daughter of her own, I could show her the picture of the infamous sleazy red shirt. Thank you.